It's the only Super Bowl I've ever watched where there were 4 MVPs minimum. Howie Roseman, the general manager, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, Jalen Hurts, the quarterback who won it for the Eagles, and the entire defensive line. It was so dominating, it has to have a ripple effect on the Dallas Cowboys and the Niners and the Rams and the Packers and how they draft. Does it not? Like, how do you block that? I mean, it was really, really good during the regular season. What was that? I mean, we talk quarterbacks all the time on this show, yet Philly humiliated Patrick Mahomes. They could not block the Eagles. I mean, Saquon Barkley was almost irrelevant. The tush push was his most activity. The D-line, the total defense. It makes Nick Sirianni this morning look like Belichick. Philadelphia's GM has and uses all the levers. Drafting, trading, free agency. And it's a relentless pursuit of excellence. Very good is not good enough. Look at their 2 picks. One is a rookie. Another one is a transformed special teams player. That is so Howie Roseman. Look at the touchdown passes. One's a Heisman winner. One, A.J. Brown, comes via a massive trade. The only roster I've seen like this in the last 15 to 20 years was that Seahawk roster when they had a similar quarterback, the elusive Russell Wilson, on the rookie contract. And remember, we've seen this before. That Seahawk defense harassed and humiliated another legend, Peyton Manning. That's what we watched yesterday. That was the lowest point for Peyton Manning in his career. Well, yesterday, Mahomes was awful. I mean, there's no shame losing to a great team. But if you look at the box score, that's the most deceiving box score outside of the turnovers I've ever seen for a quarterback. It says Patrick Mahomes, 21 of 32, and a passer rating of 95. That is junk points, junk yards, and junk completions. He had 1 first down in the first half on the first play. And what was most disappointing is that he never seemed to sort of manipulate the game. But let's just talk about Philadelphia here. They had more penalty yards, did Kansas City, than actual yards in the first half. Think about that. The Eagles had more points in the first half than Kansas City actually had yards. It was Peyton Manning facing that Seahawk defense. And last week, we said, I think this Philadelphia roster is the best since that Seahawk roster. And man, did we say it on display. Now, maybe it was inverse, where Seattle, remember that Seahawk team? The big win, they're going to do 2, and I don't know in what order Philadelphia is going to go, but I just watched a flurry, a defensive line, rookie corners, a game plan, and Mahomes was completely out of sorts. I mean, Philadelphia, this is what we thought they could be at their best, but throughout the course of the season, I can remember in week 8, 9, 10, 11, we're like, there are quarters, they're amazing, but remember early in the year, they couldn't score in the first quarter. Remember early in the year, we're like, man, they have drives. How do they ever punt? But you'd get like 2 drives a game. They put it all together last night. The GM, the DC, the quarterback, the O-line, the D-line. They didn't even need Saquon Barkley. And here was the young head coach after.
This is the ultimate team game. You can't be great without the greatness of others. And great performance by everybody. Offense, defense, special teams, Howie getting us the guys, our coaching staff, these great players. We didn't really ever care what anyone thought about how we won or their opinions. All we want to do is win.
So let's talk Patrick Mahomes. For the record, he's now just 3-2 in Super Bowls. And Tom Brady lost 3 of them by a total combined 15 points. Patrick Mahomes has lost 2, and the point differential is minus 40. And he has trailed in all 5 Super Bowls. And what really disappointed me, he never manipulated the game. He got rattled and frustrated, taken out of his game, and had no second pitch. Tom Brady always found ways, even when he had the second best roster in a Super Bowl. He found ways at the line of scrimmage to manipulate a defense, move the chains, at least be viable in field position. Anybody can win, let's be honest, with a full house or pocket aces. Can you win when you got a pair of 7s? And I felt multiple times in AFC championships or Super Bowls that Brady actually had the second best roster and had to massage it and manipulate it and move the chains with his pre-snap excellence. With Mahomes, 2 weeks to prepare with Andy Reid, it feels like they had no second pitch. And his special secret power has always been his legs. And once Philadelphia took that away, there was nothing else there. I don't remember Tom ever trailing 34-0 in any game. And in the one Super Bowl where Brady was getting rolled 28-3, he came back to win again. Brady had bad plays, bad quarters, a bad half, bad moments. This was just awful. In fact, Brady's biggest Super Bowl loss was that one possession game to the Eagles in which they never punted. So before we get into that silly GOAT conversation, know that Brady's superpower was the ability when he had the second best roster. And we never thought, New England constantly, do your job. It's about the team. They moved off really good players. They didn't have a stacked roster. The Randy Moss team felt a little stacked offensively, and they never won a ring. But the early Brady and the late Brady and the Tampa Brady was about manipulation, line of scrimmage, moving the chains, often when you had an offensive line that was struggling or under duress or was being overwhelmed. 2 weeks with Andy Reid, I didn't even feel like I got a second pitch. You don't always get a full house. Brady has never been that bad in a big game. And at least when he struggled, and he had pick sixes in Super Bowls, you felt there was a sense he was getting the most out of his roster. If you look at the clear stats now of Mahomes and Brady in Super Bowls, let's be totally honest about this. Brady is elite. Patrick's passer rating is mid-80s. That's what it is. 86.9. 10 touchdowns, 7 picks. That's with 2 weeks to prepare, and that's with Andy Reid. And again, nobody's denying Philadelphia is stacked. Go ask Peyton Manning about that Seattle defense. But what's interesting is Brady faced that Seattle defense too. And he just kept manipulating and manipulating and manipulating. And he trailed, and he was behind, and it looked like trouble. But Brady found a way to just get first downs, eat the clock, find your little weaknesses, the tiny little crevices against the Seahawks. All Brady had was a pair of 7 against him. That's all he had, and he just put his team in a position to win. Yes, he had to rely on Malcolm Butler, but he put his team in position to win. Mahomes couldn't put his team in position to be competitive. I felt like I was watching the same play over and over and over, 34-0, and I never felt like that with Brady. Here's Mahomes after.
That's the beauty of football, is that you never can be satisfied with just going out there and playing and thinking you're going to have success year in and year out. These defenses are going to continue to get better and better, and so I have to get better. And so I take a lot of ownership in that, and I want to hopefully come back and play better football.
It's interesting because I had Tom Brady on my show Friday in New Orleans, and we broached this very subject. And it's interesting because, we all know this, is there are very few great rosters in the NFL now because of salary cap. You can't do the Pittsburgh Steelers in the mid-'70s. You just can't do that. It's hard to do the Joe Montana, Bill Walsh 49ers, where you're like, I don't think they have any weaknesses. That's why what the Seahawks did for that brief time on Russell Wilson's rookie contract, you're like, this is insane. Or like when Brock Purdy's first year, when San Francisco didn't have to pay him because he was a 7th-round quarterback, and you're like, this isn't fair. Yes, Philadelphia's roster is great, and had they won this, I get it. But there is the art of quarterback. It's not all legs and arms. And Brady talked about this. Tom Brady talked about this Friday on the show.
My last year in my last Super Bowl I was a part of, I was 2 weeks of watching film. Friday night, I was just going through the film. I knew Kansas City's defense better than they knew themselves. I had the answers to the test. That's where I was great. That's where my magic superpower was. It wasn't how fast I could run. It was how fast I could diagnose what they were doing. What's the special quality? What's the internet speed of me as a quarterback? Fast as
Yes, he was Starlink before Starlink. And that's what disappointed me. It's not losing. There is no shame in losing to Philadelphia. J-Mac kept telling me all week that defensive line's trouble. And I kept thinking Joe Tooney, Creed Humphreys. They'll be fine. It's Mahomes. It's Andy off a bye. But, and this is not to just dump on Mahomes, but he's gotten a lot of praise for years. But watching that game made me realize how great Brady was. Peyton Manning was completely undone by the Seahawks. Brady beat him. Mahomes was completely undone by the Eagles' defense. No, Brady found ways to beat a Seahawk team. Manning, great. Mahomes, great. That's Brady. A lot of you guys play poker. You can't just win when you have the best hand. It is about constantly bluffing and manipulating and trying to marginalize their best and elevate yours. And I came out of that game thinking, did we ever get how good Tom was? And I'm not saying that because he works for the company. But boy, when you watch that game, I felt like Kansas City had the same play and they ran it 28 times. It is what you do before the ball is snapped. It can't just be, let's see if our left tackle can block him this time. The answer is no for 3.5 hours. J-Mac, good stuff. Congratulations. You kept, over the course of a season, we go about 50-50. I'm yelling at you and you're yelling at me, but I could acknowledge yesterday by about the second drive.
That early.
Well, it's funny. There were parts of that game, and I forget if it was like 17-0, and I'm like, it feels like it's 38-0. And then all of a sudden, the dam breaks. Like, I thought Kansas City's defense did all it could, considering it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And Kansas City's defense is essentially really for a half, maybe a half and half a quarter. Like, they were really doing as good as they could do. But Philadelphia felt like their stuff was mostly working, and when it didn't, the next play did.
Yeah.
There is something to be said. I know it's not just talent, but there is something to be said that if I have overwhelming talent and I'm smartly coached and smartly quarterback, it's hard to beat it.
Yeah.